Good morning and welcome. I'm Keith Sutton, Chair of the Wake County Board of Education. This is our second weekly address to update parents, students, staff, and the community on the many ways that the Wake County Public School System is responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know, there is nothing normal about the routines we have established this past month, from social distancing to stay-at-home proclamations. And of course, our schools are now a collection of virtual classrooms where the focus has shifted to remote learning. During this briefing, Superintendent Kathy Moore will review key decisions made this past week and review important initiatives that have been launched or expanded. I will then offer a look ahead to what families can expect in the coming days as we seek to make the most of these extraordinary circumstances. Superintendent Moore, I'll ask that you please get us started.
Thank you, Chair Sutton, and greetings to all. Indeed, it has been an eventful week as our employees and families have wrestled with many challenges and enjoyed some victories as teachers and students began to connect with one another again. I want to start by thanking all of our families for their patience, understanding, and willingness to support their child's new school endeavors. Please know that we are working as hard as we can each day to serve you and your children. Much of our work this week has been focused on how we can keep children genuinely engaged and learning from home. Many of our teachers were in touch with students this week, and some have already jumped into classes, albeit in many different ways, a bit ahead of schedule, and we are encouraged about the academic engagement that is already occurring. Before I talk about lessons, though, I want to share a conversation that has occurred frequently this past week. It involved our principals, our teachers, our staffs. The topics were grace and flexibility. For the time being, we have asked them to focus as much, if not more, on the well-being of the students and the families they're serving. We are urging them to demonstrate grace and be as flexible as they can be with working with families. They know this, of course, as many have families of their own, and they are planning and working with their own students while taking care of their families and loved ones, including children of their own who are now engaged in remote learning. But it is important that we say this out loud to one another, that the permission we grant each other in stressful times is explicit and intentional. Grace and flexibility provide the social and emotional health that our children need, that we all need, as a critical first step towards meaningful learning. It makes me proud when I hear stories of how our teachers are reassuring students while hosting online classes for those who can participate. And when those classes end, they are reaching out to children that they did not see, trying to ensure that they are doing well and keeping up with them and encouraging them to join and be a part of the learning. Relationships matter even more during a crisis. We are asking the impossible of our teachers, even while they are working through the same personal challenges we face. I want to call them out specifically for their efforts. We cannot replace the personal relationships that classrooms allowed before this pandemic. Yet one day at a time, our teachers are doing their best to recreate that world virtually. Thank you. As I mentioned, many teachers have already started working with students, even though our formal remote learning program has not yet formally launched. Our teachers have been preparing for this launch, working with colleagues on developing online lessons, and many have even taken virtual classes to learn strategies to more effectively deliver online instruction. We know that there will be bumps along the way, but I have every confidence that all of our teachers will do their level best to reduce learning loss and help our students continue to grow academically. On April 13th, our year-round schools will then assume the same school schedule as traditional calendar schools. This change was announced to all year-round families on Wednesday and will remain in effect through at least May 15th. A year-round calendar was designed to increase school capacity, and that does not make sense or is needed at this point when everyone is learning remotely from home. Neither does a 3-week break in the middle of the remote learning when the goal is to keep as many students as possible engaged in learning throughout the pandemic crisis. I appreciate the understanding and support of year-round families and staff after this decision was announced. Schedules will be adjusted as needed to make sure all students are receiving similar amounts of learning and teaching. The State Board of Education provided guidance last Friday, which was updated by DPI yesterday on student grades. We anticipate that these changes will result in primarily pass-fail marks at the end of the year. Families will receive detailed information by grade span outlining what that means for them. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction provided additional clarification yesterday to that guidance, and we are ensuring that our information conforms. Regardless, it is important to note that the guidance clearly states that it is paramount to remember the unprecedented conditions students are learning in and to focus on engagement more than evaluation. Moreover, the State Board guidance makes it clear that learning should be accessible by all students for which the learning is intended, and that districts will focus on supporting student progress and communicating feedback to students and families rather than on assigning grades. As I said, we expect to share details with families later today based on this guidance. You can expect even more detail from your teachers. It obviously isn't possible to attempt remote learning without thousands of laptops and internet connections. We are fortunate to live in a community where this is common. It is wrong, however, to assume that these tools are enjoyed by all. According to data gathered by school-based staff and our Technology Services Department, there are about 28,000 students who need an appropriate computer device at home. Another 10,000 do not have Wi-Fi access at home and will need a mobile hotspot. I am pleased to report that as we speak, Chromebooks are being deployed to each school according to student needs. Safely distributing this many laptops in the midst of a pandemic is a huge undertaking, and I want to specifically thank our employees from Technology Services and the school-based employees who are making this possible. With each passing day, this is becoming more difficult to accomplish safely, and yet each day they are rising to this task. Thank you. The distribution to students follows an 8-day period that saw nearly 4,400 laptops distributed to teachers and school-based staff. Hotspots will follow once laptops are distributed. The timetable for hotspots is driven by supply. Mr. Sutton will share additional information about this process in his remarks. As efforts have increased around remote learning, our child nutrition services workers and bus drivers have continued to provide meals to an expanding number of families. Our staff is now preparing and distributing meals for 34 food distribution sites. By the middle of this week, they were delivering more than 21,000 meals every day. Since March 17th, they've served a total of more than 186,000 meals. To our child nutrition workers and our bus drivers who are facilitating this work, thank you. We have families who are literally depending on you to survive through this pandemic. The praise for your work is well deserved. Our team is also delivering food to families who are unable to reach our food distribution sites using additional bus drivers and buses. Mr. Sutton will offer more detail in a moment on that effort. Again, I want to thank all of our families, employees, especially our teachers, tech service workers, and child nutrition services employees and bus drivers who are helping us with our essential function of educating students and maintaining relationships and promoting the environment that's conducive to continued learning. Together, we are the definition of community, and the grace and gratitude we show each other each day makes us stronger. With that, I will turn it over to Chair Sutton.
hearing anything anymore either. But his position.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. I will echo your thanks to all of our staff members for the commitment they've shown to meet the needs of all students and families. Indeed, meeting the needs of all families will be our greatest challenge in the weeks ahead. As Superintendent Moore said, many students have already met with teachers online and worked through optional assignments, and that is wonderful. But there are, of course, thousands who don't have the necessary technology to participate. Preventing those students from slipping behind is of utmost concern to us all. And any quality teacher, and we have thousands, will agree with that sentiment. That is why our efforts to distribute hotspots that provide Wi-Fi access is so important. The 10,000 hotspots that Superintendent Moore mentioned should be available by April 13th. We are told this is the quickest delivery possible under these circumstances. They will be distributed in much the same way student laptops will be provided. For everyone's safety, individual families will be contacted and given a set time to arrive at their school to claim their device. When they arrive, a small group of school volunteers will be joined by tech services employees who will walk them through the process that ensures that laptops are provided while adhering to our health officials' guidance. To keep this process safe, we ask that families arrive at their scheduled time and do not come to the school if they are sick. If families are unable to pick up their laptops or hotspots, we will work with them through our transportation department to deliver devices. I want to thank you in advance for your patience as this large-scale initiative gets underway. But April 13th is obviously 10 days away, which is why we are grateful participants in a new partnership with the UNC television system. Some of you might have seen that UNC TV has just started to offer educational programming 5 days a week, an outstanding resource for those awaiting needed technology. UNC TV is dedicating 2 blocks of programming each day with content for 4th through 12th graders. For pre-K through 3rd grade, UNC TV's 24/7 PBS Kids channel, which is called Roodle, will continue providing programming appropriate for that age group. The update to families this afternoon that Superintendent Moore mentioned will contain more details. We are very optimistic about the potential of this partnership, particularly for families who did not have full digital access. I also want to thank the State Board of Education for the grading guidelines they issued last week that make clear that no work will be graded until all students have full access. That's a critical policy for promoting equity, and I, among others, appreciate the understanding and support of this policy from all students, parents, and staff. I would also like to highlight the decision this week by the State Board of Education to authorize a state of emergency leave policy. Up to 168 hours of paid state of emergency leave is now available to all eligible employees who are not able to work remotely or who are unable to report to their assigned work site to complete their duties. In addition, eligible employees who requested leave or indicated they would make up the time during the school closure period of March 16th to March 31st may now take up to 96 hours of additional state of emergency leave. At a time when millions of workers nationwide have found themselves unemployed, this important decision would literally keep some of our WCPSS families solvent. It is greatly appreciated. Superintendent Moore mentioned some of our food distribution efforts, which I also applaud. In addition to the 34 distribution sites, the district began a program called the Big Bus Food Trucks, which served more than 5,000 meals this week to 5 specific neighborhoods where many residents don't have transportation. It's been such a success that we are adding 7 more Big Bus Food Trucks and to community sites in the next week. Information about this program is being sent directly to families living in those communities so that they know exactly when and where food will be available for them. All of our food distribution sites and programs will be open during spring break, which occurs April 6th through the 10th, and that includes Good Friday. I'd like to close by telling the entire Wake County community how inspired I am by your response to this crisis. The parents who are doing their level best to become teachers on the fly while affording their children and themselves abundant patience and grace. The frontline medical personnel and first responders who are working tirelessly and at their own personal risk to preserve health and safety. And to the thousands upon thousands who find ways large and small to retain our shared humanity. These include car parades through neighborhoods, donations to food banks, ordering takeout from a struggling restaurant, notes of encouragement written in chalk on roads and sidewalks, and on and on and on. All of it gives me hope and confidence that we will emerge from this experience stronger, more resilient, more compassionate, and more grateful for our blessings. So I'll end as I did last week. Please continue to take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you. We'll now take questions from the media.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Lisa Luton, Communications Director. We'll now take questions. To ask a question, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself and your outlet, and to whom you are directing your question, and mute yourself after you've asked your question. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Sloan Heffernan from WRAL News. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, thank you so much for all that you all are doing for Wake County families. This question is directed to the superintendent. You talked about more information being relayed to parents today, and I'm curious as to what parents can expect. Can you just go over briefly what, in a general sense, or if you're willing to offer more specifics, that would be even better, what parents can expect to see today?
What parents will be able to see today is guidance that lays out more specifically the implementation of the changes that the State Board and DPI made and sent out last Friday, and some additional guidance they sent out yesterday to further clarify what parents can expect with regards to grading. Some of it will be specific, in particular for seniors. A lot of that was already pretty specific last Friday, but it's really the implementation of that and what that looks like for seniors moving forward. But it will also address needs for pre-K through 11. We want to assure parents that the learning is important, that it continues to be important, but we also want to assure them that it is the academic growth and the learning activities and the opportunity to continue to engage meaningfully that are most important. And hopefully it'll give them an opportunity to see specifically what that will look like. But it will also include some follow-up that will have to occur from teachers because there's a sort of a stream with regards to the guidance for the district, for the state, and then how it is actually implemented by teachers. So we will outline some of the parameters for the guiding, and then teachers will fill in the blanks.
And a follow-up question, if I may. You spoke about the 28,000 laptops and 10,000 hotspots. Would you talk about the funding mechanism and the expense for those devices if they needed to be purchased?
The funding mechanism, well, so the laptops for teachers that we completed the distribution of we accelerated the distribution that was already in progress for laptops for school-based staff, and those funds were available from the bond that was passed in 2018. And we have it's a 3-4 year plan for distribution of devices. So we accelerated where we were in the process to get teachers their devices. For the students, we are using primarily devices that already exist in schools, which has required that we move some inventory around in order to make sure that it is available where it is needed based on the student requests. So those are devices that are primarily already in our schools. The hotspots have been ordered, and we have some funds that are specifically reserved for technology where we are deferring other needs in order to get the hotspots ordered.
Good morning, Jamise Price here with CBS 17. I just wanted to know the exact date or an estimated time of when you guys will launch the virtual learning. I know you said that hasn't officially started yet, but do we have an official date?
So the date by which we expect all teachers and all students to be engaged is April 13th. We have some that are already engaged, another set that will start next week, and then by April 13th, it should be everyone.
Karen Hughes from the News and Observer. This is for the superintendent. I just wanted to make clarity on something you said earlier. You said that you're expecting to primarily move to a pass-fail system for grades. Is that for K-11 also, or is that going to be only for the seniors? And if so, for all the grades, why for those grades as well?
That is the direction that we've received specifically for seniors from DPI. For pre-K to 11, there's still some, there's an ability to do that, for example, for third quarter grades, which third quarter has already completed. There's not hard and fast guidance for the end of the year on those grades because of the uncertainty about whether or not we will be returning to school, because of the need to address the 5 critical factors that DPI has put out there. So it's not, as of right now, it's not hard and fast yet for pre-K through 11, but the guidance from DPI does actually implement pass-fail or something similar to that for seniors.
Follow-up question. So I try to make sure. So what will you be telling the families of K-11 students about grades then? Obviously, there'll be more details, but are you going to be telling them that they will be getting regular grades or that they'll be getting pass-fail?
The guidance from DPI makes it clear that in order to assess student learning with traditional grades, that you've got to meet factors that ensure that every student has access. That will be difficult for us. We know that that's not the case. What the guidance from DPI stresses is that we are providing appropriate learning activities and that we are providing feedback that allows students to stay authentically academically engaged and continue to learn and grow. And what that looks like will depend. It may not be traditional grades, but there will be feedback and formative assessment occurring.
I guess another follow-up question. Assuming, I guess, how will this potentially impact the students in grades 9 through 11 who rely on this for their GPA? Has that been considered yet? Or is that going to be mentioned in the guidance?
So I think that is part of what's happening at the state level as well. Those conversations are occurring. They're getting feedback from school district personnel and superintendents so that when they finalize that guidance, it will include all of that feedback.
And I'm just looking, this is Sloan again from WRAL News. Just curious as what does this mean for graduating on to the next grades for those in grades K through 11?
I think, and that's really what the guidance contemplates, is what are the appropriate ways to issue assessments and determine a final grade, if you will, that support promotion and retention that makes sense for students. That's why the feedback during this time of remote learning is so important to students and to their families. We know that the impact of this closure will go into the next school year and that there will need to be an opportunity to assess at the beginning, either when we return from this pandemic, whether it's this current school year or the next school year, and I think it'll lead into the next school year that we'll have to continue to assess where our kids are to see what the impact of all of this is, because there is going to be some interruption and we will need to mitigate that. And I think that will go into next year.
Any last questions?
What precautions are you guys taking at the food distribution sites in an effort to slow the spread or not spread the coronavirus? We've seen that happen at another school district, and now they are ending their food distribution program. So what are you guys doing to prevent that from happening?
Mr. Sutton, I'm happy to take that. We were actually just on a phone call with EOC this morning, making sure that the procedures and the steps that the Wake County Public School System were following were appropriate, and was there any updated guidance. And what they have stressed is what has been stressed all along. They are very thankful and appreciative and know that we are providing a critical, needed service, an essential service, if you will, in supporting the vulnerable populations in our community. What we are stressing, and they have asked us to stress, is front-end screening, where we make sure that a person who is not feeling well does not come to work, that we are screening employees when they do show up, that we are providing personal protective equipment as needed, and that we are just making sure that we're following all of those guidelines. Another reason that it's really important that we thank the folks that are doing this work is because there is some risk associated anytime any of us leave our homes and go out into the community. But as we spoke with the EOC this morning, this is an essential service. And so it is important that we continue to provide it for as long as we're able to provide it, while also making sure that we are taking the steps for our community and our staff members to also be safe. And also to make sure that we are providing options so that a staff member who is not comfortable in that setting has other opportunities to continue to earn their paycheck as well.
Everybody, this is Lisa Luton, Communications Director for the Wake County Public School System. At this time, we're going to conclude the press conference. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
Do you know how to